I don't feed pollen patties. I don't feed syrup. I hardly treat anything. I don't treat for mites. I don't treat for small hive beetles. Only thing that I do is I manage the space inside. Welcome to the channel, guys. By the end of the video, you're gonna know how I do pest management. This is gonna be a highly controversial topic. So controversial, if you want something entertaining, go down to the comments because I will be shocked if there's not old timers down there trying to tear me a new one. And you might learn something because my type of beekeeping differs from your type of beekeeping. So we're gonna get right to it. You will learn pest management, how I do it. Where am I basing my knowledge? Well, I've got two books. One is Keeping Bees with a Smile. Two is Horizontal Hives. I have a third one, Dr. Seeley's Life of Honeybees. You should see that on the screen right now. And why do I care about this? What are you guys talking about? Well, for me, I practice Darwinian beekeeping, right? That's the last chapter of Dr. Seeley's book. And I do very little, almost no pest management. In fact, my pest management effectively boils down to just how much space I give the hive so they can protect it themselves. Now, we're gonna go way back. We're gonna do the way back machine. If Reverend Langstroth were alive today, who basically invented modern beekeeping as we know it, he would be ashamed of you and he'd be cursing you right now. Don't know this for a fact, but if you owned cows, if you owned cattle, and you lost 80% of your herd every single year, or every 3 years, your whole herd wiped out and you were just continuously buying more and then redoing stuff, that would be considered a failure point. He would consider you a failure. Most farmers would consider you a failure. And if you didn't have bees and you had a different type of species for animal husbandry, then that would be big. And so many beekeepers get into this and they're discouraged so early on because they fail the pest management side. Well, if they fail the pest management side, Hugh, how are you standing here telling me not to manage my pest control? I'm glad you asked that, faceless hole in the camera. I'll tell you. First thing I do, and this is the most critical thing, that I start with bees that are from my local area that have overwintered. I catch all of my own swarms. That means that those bees have successfully overwintered. Is it possible that I caught them from someone else's apiary that swarmed? Absolutely, it's possible, for sure. In fact, I'm certain that I think I have a heavy Italian bee strain influence around my area. There is a hardware store called Nixa Hardware that for many, many years, going back decades, has been one of the only places you could get bees in the area. And those bees predominantly are from Georgia and they are Italian strain hives. Well, I live in the center of the United States and Italian bees are, like the name suggests, from Italy and the Mediterranean, right? Mediterranean and in the United States, those are grown in Florida and Georgia. And in Florida and Georgia, they have a very different temperature and climate than we have in Missouri, right? We have mild winters, but we have crazy winters as well, at least compared to Florida and Georgia. So when you buy bees that were raised or genetically adapted for Florida and Georgia and you move them to Missouri, now their likelihood of surviving the winter is significantly lower. Now here's the thing, Florida and Georgia are great for Italian bees. Italian bees give a very large amount of honey because they have a very high hive population and they predominantly live in places that don't have really harsh winters. You take Italian bees and you are living in Minnesota or you're living in Montana and you buy bees from the local hardware store or a Tractor Supply or something, those could be coming from Florida or Georgia, and there's a very slim chance they're gonna not make it from your hive. Now, that's the one thing. We talked about weather. Let's talk about pests. The pests that are in Florida and Georgia are different from the pests that are in your local area. If you catch a wild swarm that is overwintered, that means that they hopefully are suited to your area. Now, if you are like me and you love the hobby, right? I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get one hive. Now I have 6 hives and counting. I'm gonna keep adding a hive here and there. Not a big deal. I'm not trying to make an income from my bees. I want the bees initially for my garden. Now I'm pulling honey. I'm enjoying it. Enjoy the permaculture aspect of letting bees help pollinate things. I'm going to capture those feral bees. I'm gonna place them in my hives. They may be from local beekeepers' apiaries. They could be from those Florida and Georgia strains, but they at least overwintered. Now, did they overwinter with help? I don't know. It could be. I'm banking on humans being lazy and a lot of them not feeding them pollen patties, not feeding them water. And there you go. That's okay. But all of this was about pests, and I'm talking about weather here. Well, I live kind of in the country, and I'm surrounded by woods on most of my sides. If you look at my house, there's a U, and it's woods everywhere, and I'm pretty much off on my own. There are wild bees living around any forested area. I guarantee it. And so I am most likely catching bees that have lived for a few generations out there. Now, this is the most critical part. Once I catch them, I put them in my hive, I have a horizontal hive. But what matters less about the hive shape is more how insulated that hive is. My hives, they're very insulated. I use Dr. Leo Sharoskin's hive. Those hives right there have insulation. And in the wintertime, I'll add a layer of insulation on the top. It'll help them overwinter. Now, last thing I said was, I don't feed pollen patties. I don't feed syrup. I hardly treat anything. I don't treat for mites. I don't treat for small hive beetles. Only thing that I do is I manage the space inside. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, the very first time as a beekeeper, bees have such short lifespans that the instinct of bees are, I was just born. The bees before me started this project. It's up to me to take over this project and run with it. So as a human, if I'm manipulating the hive, the bees are just gonna accept what I did, right? If I want to create queen cups, I'm gonna mash my pinky in there and then make some of my, some of the comb larger. The bees are gonna say somebody decided that we need queen cells, right? I'm gonna move the entrance from one side to the other side of my horizontal hive. The bees are gonna say, okay, it's time for me to move the brood chamber from here to here. Right? They operate off instinct. So the instinct when you give a hive too much space is that the instinct is, hey, there's comb. The other bees have told me before me have said we need this much space. Well, if you give too much space to too small of a hive, they will spread themselves thin trying to defend it, and it allows pests to easily get in there. Right? One of the biggest pests that we fight outside of the varroa mite around here is one of the biggest ones we fight. Absolutely, hands down, it is small hive beetles. In our area. Small hive beetles will go in there. They'll have a weird, not a symbiotic, but a parasitic relationship with the bees, but the bees will even feed them. They'll guard against them, but they'll feed them, right? It'll trick a bee and a bee will actually feed it. And then, but the bees know they don't like them, so they'll keep them at bay in the corners. So if there's space for the small hive beetles to hide, they'll get to them. Now, what I do is I make sure that I have an appropriate size hive space given to them. If you don't give bees enough space and they max out, then they'll kick out a swarm because the signal is, hey, we're running out of space. Let's create queen cells. We're going to kick out a swarm. That is the reproduction of the hive. About the only thing I do is make sure I don't give them too much space. That's it. That's my secret. That's all I do. About this time, I don't treat with varroa mites. Why? No one treats the wild bees in the forest. I'm catching bees that have overwintered and dealt with their own pest control without humans having to give them input. What does that mean for me? I could get aggressive bees. Possible. I haven't yet. I could get bees that have an extremely high population count but low honey production. I could get bees that have low population count and extreme honey production. I don't know. I lack that control. But I don't care that I lack that control, because if I do get bees that don't produce very much honey, I'm just gonna get more hive. I'm gonna keep catching more and I'm gonna add more hives to it. My pest management system basically is just a bee management system. I spend at a maximum of 30 minutes a year per hive. And that's if I'm really going down cleaning stuff up. Really, it's more like 4 or 5 minutes. Crack it open, check where the brood chamber's off, winterize the hive or de-winterize the hive. That's it. I check them twice a year if I want to. If I really want to get crazy, I'll check them a third time, right, in the spring as they're really expanding out. So that's on me if I want to leave the space. If I don't want to expand my hives, then the bees are going to start swarming. It'll be fine. I'll still have a hive and a swarm will go off to be popular, right? So that's kind of where I'm doing it. Now, at this point in time, down below, you're going to have experienced beekeepers who have a lot of knowledge, who have fought this, who have done beekeeping since before varroa mite destructor came in the 90s to the United States, and they're going to say, I can't believe, what about foul brood? What about this? What about that? I will not keep bees that cannot keep themselves alive. I am catching wild bees, feral bees. They have overwintered and can deal with the pests on their own. If I catch a hive and it only makes it 1 or 2 years, they have 1 or 2 more iterations to kick off a swarm or two, and I can probably capture them and replace them. It is counterproductive productive for you to expend extreme amounts of money and extreme amounts of effort for you to then lose your hive anyway. You are breeding weak genetics by trying to keep them alive. For you, it's an investment. I can't believe that. You're right, it is an investment. Invest in your time today so you can have the apiary of your dreams for a long period of time. I do this in investing all the time. For those of you who don't know, I am a millionaire, self-made, and I take risks and sacrifice early on in my life. So I continuously saved so I could invest. And then I lived off the investments and not off of the principal. I sacrificed my time in my 20s when I was, instead of going out to the bars and hanging out with friends, I saved my money so I could then do something. And when a big opportunity came along, I seized a hold of it. For you as a beekeeper, you have these local swarms that you're catching, are adding their genetics to your area. If you start keeping enough hives that are making it or overwintering and you're not keeping them alive or doing anything, the pests didn't kill them, the cold didn't kill them, the heat didn't kill them. Now what you have is you have resilient genetics in your local population. I am intentional, not treating my bees. I grow the genetics of strong genetics in my local beehive population. Those are the bees that I want in the woods. Those are the bees that I want to catch in the future. And so if I do anything to save a hive, I am keeping weak genetics in my area. We have weak bees. We have weak bees from weak genetics because humans have handled them for so long. Right? This is a bit of a rant. I'm sorry, guys. But humans have tried to manage bees for so long, and finally they ran up for a pest, the big one. If you read Dr. Seeley's book, The Wild Life of Honeybees, he documented these bees in 1977. Before any of that was around and all the genetics. Then after Varroa destructor came, he wondered, oh my God, this has just killed all the hives in the world. Humans, we're screwed. We have to do all these treatments, all this pest control. Are the wild bees still there? Do they even? So he set out to answer that question. He went and found into the forest, the same place he did the study in 1977, and he found there were wild bees and they were plentiful. Well, the DNA test results found that of like 290 genetic lines that used to exist, there were only 4 genetic lines that still exist. That means of 200 some odd ones, down to 4 is what the bees lost in genetic diversity. Don't worry, the genetic diversity is still being passed on by the drone. But those were never managed for 40 years. Did the bees, some people might say, Varroa destructor never made it there. Absolutely made it there. Completely made it there. For sure. No questions about it. You read more on his experience. He goes into it in the book. But those bees have never been managed by humans for 40 years, and they're still alive. You take those genetics, you put them in your apiary, you're going to be in good shape. Now, I don't remember if it was Dr. Seeley's book or one of the webinars or podcasts he was on. He actually talks about one time he got a super weak hive and it was crazy. So he went to investigate. When he went to investigate, across the street was a farmer who had an apiary. Their genetics were blended, or he had caught a wild swarm. His apiary had swarmed, and those were just like dying out and really weak and wimpy. And so the ones that are deeper in the woods, not like that. Well, Hugh, what if I don't have anything that is local to my area and I'm in an urban environment? Well, you can drive 15 minutes out of town and you can put a swarm box up. Camouflage. You can find public land and throw a swarm box up. I don't know about that one. You better check your local laws. You can find a buddy who lives in the country near you. You can go to a local beekeeping group and ask if you can put a swarm. Or the last one, and I trust this one a little bit less, but the last one is you can buy nukes off of Craigslist or whatever, the local beekeeping group, so you at least have some bees. Now, I don't like to do that because most people still treat their bees with something. Here are the benefits. 1, I rarely pay any attention to my bees. Very, very good in the humans. Because of that, it's good in the bees because I rarely disturb them because I'm not constantly checking on them. I don't have to go kill 300 bees, to check for varroa mites, right? I feel bad about that. Another one, it's way, way, way cheaper because I have no inputs. I don't feed syrup. I don't feed pollen patties. I don't treat them for varroa mites. I don't treat the brood chamber. I don't manipulate the hive looking for the queen. I don't do very much with them, and I still get a nice harvest of honey with almost no work. This is what you want, right? If you try to manage them in a normal hive, it's probably not going to work as well. Try to manage it in a horizontal hive, you can. Check out this book. It's linked below on Amazon. Keeping Bees with a Smile. It's great. Anyways, my pest management system is to let nature run its course. You should not be keeping weak genetics alive. The very last thing is because I don't treat my hive and I don't treat the brood chamber with chemicals, I actually get to keep and use 100% of my wax, and my wax is edible. And I can collect royal jelly and all kinds of really nice things because I don't treat for anything. There is nothing I treat for. So it is 100% safe for me to to reuse the wax, to consume the wax if I want to make lip balm. I don't have to worry about pests stressing the hive out and all that good stuff. So that's huge. In conclusion, you should not keep weak bloodlines around. Every time you lift a finger to save your hive, to save your $200 investment, you are shooting future you in the foot for years to come. Now again, commercial beekeepers are saying, this is my livelihood, I'm doing this, blah, blah, blah. You can't tell people to do this, you're insane. I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the way I do things, so I'm gonna keep doing it my way. You do your way. But the last thing is, I'm talking to mostly backyard beekeepers, right? People who have a homestead. Hey, you know what? I got a job in town, I have some chickens, I have a small garden, I'm curious about bees. You do it the crazy way, the commercial way, you're gonna maximize honey production. No doubt, but that's also almost a full-time job. So if you want almost no work, extremely high profit margin because you have zero inputs, then you would keep things my way. That's my way to deal with pests. Guys, if you like this kind of stuff, please like and subscribe. If you hated it, please comment down below. Tell me how I was wrong, because I always learn something. I always appreciate your opinion, guys. You're some smart people out there. I love it. Got value? Please, please share this with someone you think would get value, guys. You know, in this day and age, someone can just poof. Behind a computer screen, boom, I'm gone forever. There is no more Hugh. He never existed. You and I can beat the system. We can fight the man by you just bypassing the algorithm and sharing it with someone that you think would get value out of it. Like this stuff, remember to like, subscribe, get out there and grow something. We'll see you next time. Woo! Boom, bam, ba, 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 bam, boom, bam, ba, 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 bam, boom, bam, ba, 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 bam, boom, ba, ba, da, bam, bam, bam.